Maria, a 32-year-old senior UX designer, had built a life that many would envy. She lived in a peaceful suburban neighborhood, tucked just outside a busy city, her own quiet sanctuary. It was a home she'd worked hard for, bought with her own savings just 2 years ago. Her world was one of discipline, ambition, and self-sufficiency. But underneath the calm surface of her life, there were cracks. Her father, Antonio, was a mechanic with old-fashioned values. He loved Maria, but he adored her younger brother, Marco, the son he saw as the family legacy. Maria was different. She had to prove herself, to carve out her own path. And that sometimes meant facing a world that didn't quite understand her. But little did she know, her carefully constructed life was about to be turned upside down by the people she trusted most. Maria was raised in a home where hard work and family values were emphasized above all else. Her father, Antonio, a mechanic by trade, was the kind of man who believed in the old school idea that men were providers, protectors, and the ones who carried the family's legacy. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, it was usually about practical things, fixing a car, tending to the garden, or most importantly, making sure his son, Marco, was set up for success. Antonio loved Maria, of course, but in his mind, Marco, as the son, was the one who would carry the family name forward. For Antonio, this was the natural order of things. And Maria, as the daughter, was expected to step into the role of caretaker when the time came, marry, and pass on the responsibilities to her husband. There was love, but there was also a clear, unspoken division of roles within the family. Marco, the youngest, was the golden child. He was charming, witty, and always managed to skate through life on a wave of charisma and luck. He never seemed to have to work too hard for anything, whether it was getting out of trouble, dodging responsibilities, or making his way through life without much effort. He had an endless string of get-rich-quick schemes, from selling the latest tech gadgets to investing in cryptocurrencies, each one more grandiose than the last. But the problem was that none of them ever panned out. Despite the failures, Marco never seemed to learn the lesson. Instead, he would hop from one idea to the next, confident that the next big thing was just around the corner. Maria, on the other hand, had a different upbringing altogether. She wasn't given the luxury of being carefree. From an early age, she understood that nothing would come easy for her. She had to prove herself every step of the way. While Marco was out there floating through life, Maria was focused, driven, and determined to carve out her own path. She worked tirelessly to get scholarships, to get the grades, and to earn every achievement that came her way. School wasn't just a place to learn, it was her escape, her way to prove to herself and to her father that she could be something more than what her role as a daughter seemed to dictate. She wasn't the one who'd marry well or stay in the shadows. No, she was going to build something for herself, something that stood on its own, independent of any man. But that didn't mean Maria felt like she had the approval she craved. Even as she brought home award after award, graduated with honors, and took on leadership roles at work, she still felt like she was in Marco's shadow. It was never enough. Antonio would speak with pride about Marco, recounting his latest adventure or his big plans for the future. But when it came to Maria, it was always, "You're doing well, Maria. But don't forget, a woman's true role is in the home." Her father's praise, while genuine, was always overshadowed by the feeling that it was never quite as important as what Marco was doing. He would talk about his dreams for Marco, about the legacy Marco was going to leave behind, and Maria, no matter what she accomplished, would always feel like a side note in his grand narrative. Her father's favoritism toward Marco left Maria feeling alone, even when she was surrounded by people. There were times when she would sit at the dinner table, listening to Antonio and Marco laugh and talk about their day, while she quietly picked at her food, feeling like an outsider in her own home. She had no one to turn to, no one who truly understood the pressure she was under. Marco would often come home late, still wearing his trademark smirk, talking about the latest schemes he had up his sleeve, making it clear that he was untouchable, that he didn't need to work hard for anything. The world, in his eyes, owed him something. And for the longest time, Maria thought that maybe it was just her, maybe she was imagining it. But the more she worked, the more she achieved, the more the gap between her and Marco grew. She saw Marco as the embodiment of everything she wasn't: lazy, entitled, and constantly seeking shortcuts, while she was stuck with the constant pressure of proving herself, of earning every single thing she had. Marco's carefree attitude only highlighted the isolation Maria felt. She was the one who spent hours studying, burning the midnight oil, trying to get ahead in a world that never seemed to notice her efforts. She was the one who sacrificed weekends to work on projects that would push her career forward. She was the one who spent years building her savings, all while Marco spent money he didn't have, buying into every new trend that promised to make him rich. He had an air of arrogance, as if he was above it all, and yet everything seemed to fall into his lap. The tension between them only grew over time. Marco would poke fun at Maria's rigid work ethic, joking about how she didn't know how to have fun. He'd flaunt his latest investment in a get-rich-quick scheme, and Maria would roll her eyes, knowing all too well that it would end just like the others: empty promises and no results. But the worst part was that she couldn't really argue with him. She couldn't tell him how much it hurt to see him wasting his potential while she poured every ounce of herself into building something real. And when Maria's hard work finally paid off when she bought her house with her own money, it was supposed to be her crowning achievement. But even then, it wasn't the validation she thought it would be. Instead, she was met with subtle comments from Antonio like, "It's a big house for one person," or "You must be lonely in there." They were little jabs, but they stung. It was as though, in his eyes, no matter what she accomplished, she would always be the daughter, the one who didn't matter as much as the son. As the years went on, Maria found herself more and more distanced from her family. Even as she rose through the ranks at work, she felt like an outsider, someone who was never truly understood, never truly accepted for who she was and what she had achieved. Her father's silent favoritism toward Marco weighed on her, and Marco's smug indifference only added to the frustration. She had tried, over and over, to win his approval, but it was never enough. The harder she worked, the more she realized that it wasn't just Marco she had to compete with. It was the deeply ingrained mindset of her father, who could never see her as anything other than the daughter, who would eventually fade into the background once her role was fulfilled. And so, Maria continued, driven by a need to prove herself, to break free from the shadow of her father's traditional values, to show the world that she could be her own legacy. She poured everything into her work, into the life she was building, determined to show her father and her brother that she could stand on her own. But it wasn't until later, when her sanctuary would be invaded by those closest to her, that Maria would truly understand just how deep the ties of family went, and how they could either support or shatter everything she had worked for. After years of hard work, Maria finally achieved something monumental. She bought her own house. It wasn't a mansion, not by any means, but it was hers. A 2-story, quaint home with a well-manicured garden and a price tag that made her feel both proud and a little nervous. $500,000, all paid for with her own savings. Every penny of it was a testament to the long nights, the sacrifices, and the determination that had driven her since she was young. It was a symbol of everything she had fought for: a place where she could finally rest, surrounded by the fruits of her labor. No one could take it away from her. It was the embodiment of her independence. It wasn't just a house, It was a declaration that she had carved out her own path, free from the constraints of her father's expectations and the weight of her brother's entitlement. But even in this moment of triumph, there was a nagging feeling that didn't quite go away. Her father, Antonio, had a way of casting a shadow over even the brightest moments. He was proud of Maria, of course, but it was never the kind of pride that would make her feel truly seen. His pride always seemed reserved for Marco, his son, the one he believed would carry on the family legacy. Even as Maria poured herself into her work, proving time and time again that she was more than capable of succeeding on her own, Antonio couldn't quite shake the belief that Marco was the one who would take charge of things, and that belief would always color their interactions. Antonio's pride in Marco was apparent even when he talked about Maria's accomplishments. It was always a little bit offhand, a little bit dismissive. When Maria bought her house, Antonio said, "It's a big house for one person. Maria, are you sure you'll be okay in there by yourself?" It wasn't a question that needed an answer, just a subtle reminder that Maria, in his eyes, was still the daughter, the one who would eventually be married off and take on the role of caretaker. Meanwhile, Marco's more carefree attitude was always rewarded. His dreams of becoming a successful entrepreneur or crypto mogul were always met with encouragement, no matter how many times they failed to materialize. When Marco talked about his plans for the future, Antonio's face would light up with excitement. It was clear where his loyalties lay, and it wasn't with Maria. It wasn't just Antonio's remarks that bothered Maria, though Marco, too, had his way of making her feel like her success was nothing to be truly proud of. He had this way of walking through the rooms of her house during family visits, his eyes sweeping over the space with a barely disguised smirk. "Must be nice," he'd say, always a little too smug for Maria's liking. "When I hit it big with my crypto portfolio, I'll get one twice this size." Marco's words weren't just idle boasting, they were loaded with the kind of entitlement that had been fostered by their father for years. Marco had never had to work for anything, and the idea that Maria had earned this home through sheer grit and determination seemed lost on him. To him, it was all just a stepping stone to something bigger, a temporary blip on his journey to wealth and success. Maria, on the other hand, had worked tirelessly for this moment. She had sacrificed weekends, she had put in the late hours, and she had fought tooth and nail to get where she was. She wasn't content to just follow the traditional path of marriage and family that her father had envisioned for her. She wanted more, and she had achieved it. But even as she stood in the house that she had worked so hard for, it felt like something was missing. There was no sense of approval from her father, no sign that her accomplishments had made an impact. She could never shake the feeling that no matter what she did, she would always be seen as the daughter, the one who had to prove herself over and over again. As she settled into her new home, Maria found herself becoming more and more isolated. Her father's subtle remarks, Marco's envy, and the weight of her own expectations made it hard for her to truly relax. But despite the tension, Maria tried to focus on the positives. She had a beautiful home, a successful career, and a sense of independence that she had worked her whole life to achieve. But the isolation lingered, a constant reminder that no matter how much she achieved, she would always be in the shadow of her family's expectations. And then, as if on cue, the question came up. Maria's company, the global tech firm where she worked as a senior UX designer, had an incredible opportunity. They were launching a massive project in their London office, and they needed someone to lead the team. It was a career-defining moment, a chance for Maria to prove herself on an international stage. The pay was fantastic, and the company would cover her living expenses while she was there. There was only one catch: she would have to leave in 3 weeks. It was a whirlwind of planning and excitement, but the biggest question was what to do with her house. Leaving it empty for 6 months didn't feel right, and she was worried about the security of the property. The last thing she wanted was to return to a house that had been damaged or broken into while she was away. It was during one of their regular family dinners that the solution came up. Antonio, as usual, had a plan. He suggested that Marco and his girlfriend, Isabella, stay in Maria's house while she was away. It'll help them save on rent, he said, and they can look after the place for you. Maria was hesitant. She knew how Marco was always looking for ways to cut corners and avoid responsibility, but she also knew that the alternative was either hiring a stranger or leaving the house vacant, which didn't sit well with her either. Marco, of course, saw the opportunity. He looked up from his phone with wide, innocent eyes and said, "Yeah, Maria, that would be amazing. We'd be super careful. Water the plants, collect the mail, everything. It would be like we're not even here." Isabella, who had been quietly sitting next to Marco, chimed in sweetly. "We would be the perfect house sitters. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." Maria hesitated. She could see the charm in Marco's words, but she knew the reality. Marco had a history of getting into trouble, and Isabella wasn't much better. She wasn't sure she could trust them, but at the same time, she didn't want to appear selfish. She didn't want to seem like the sister who couldn't help out her brother, especially when Antonio had put so much pressure on her to be the good daughter. "Okay," Maria said finally, laying out the terms. "You can stay in the guest room. My office and my master bedroom are off limits. You're responsible for paying the utility bills while you're here. I'll forward them to you. No parties, no major changes. You can't have people over without letting me know first." Marco and Isabella both nodded enthusiastically, agreeing to everything without question. They even signed a simple, informal agreement that Maria had typed up, outlining the terms. It felt like a relief. She was helping her brother, and at least the house would be looked after. For a brief moment, it seemed like everything would work out. But deep down, Maria couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something wasn't right. She couldn't fully trust Marco, not after all the times he'd made empty promises and failed to follow through, but she pushed that doubt aside. After all, it was just 6 months. And maybe, just maybe, this would be the thing that helped Marco grow up. Maybe this would be the wake-up call he needed to take responsibility for his life. Little did she know, agreeing to let Marco and Isabella stay at her house would set off a chain of events that would change everything. She had made a simple decision to help family, but that decision would come back to haunt her in ways she could never have predicted. The house that was supposed to be her sanctuary, the symbol of her independence, would soon be taken from her by the very people she trusted most. Maria's time in London was a whirlwind of excitement, challenge, and, most importantly, success. When she first arrived, she could hardly believe that this massive international project, one she had worked so hard to be a part of, was finally underway. The company had given her the opportunity to lead the team on the ground, and the responsibility felt like a huge endorsement of her skills. It wasn't just about the prestige of the project, it was a chance to prove herself on a global scale. The work was demanding, the deadlines tight, and the pressure constant. But Maria thrived in that environment. She'd always been someone who found clarity in the midst of chaos, and this project was no exception. The team was talented, the clients were pleased with the progress, and everything she touched seemed to be turning into gold. She was finally where she had always dreamed of being recognized for her abilities, trusted with important tasks, and, as a result, her confidence soared. The excitement of the work, the new experiences, and the fast-paced environment kept Maria's mind occupied. Every day was a new challenge, and she was completely immersed in it. For once, she didn't feel like the outsider or the daughter struggling to prove her worth. Her professional accomplishments had finally placed her on a level playing field with her colleagues. And in London, she was part of a new, vibrant world of possibility. Her team exceeded all expectations, delivering their results ahead of schedule. And Maria had never felt more accomplished. She could feel the weight of all her years of hard work coming together in this one moment. It was exhilarating, and for the first time in a long time, Maria allowed herself to fully bask in the feeling of success. The promotion came shortly after the project launched. Her boss, the director of the team back in the headquarters, called her into his office one afternoon. Maria had been working late on a project update when the call came in. She expected it to be another routine check-in. Instead, her boss had something unexpected to say. "Maria, I'm happy to inform you that we're offering you a director-level position. You've demonstrated outstanding leadership, and we'd like you to take on even more responsibility moving forward." Maria could hardly believe it at first. Director. It felt surreal. This was the level she had been working toward for years, and now it was within her reach. She thanked her boss, her heart racing, as she stepped out of the office. She didn't want to show too much excitement. She knew she still had work to do, but inside she felt elated. This promotion was proof that everything she had worked for had paid off. It was a validation, not just from her company, but from herself. She had done it. But even as she soaked in the success, there was a part of her that remained tethered to home. Maria's family was never far from her mind. Even as she buried herself in work, she had been away from them for months, and she missed the familiarity of their voices, the routine of family dinners, and the comfort of knowing they were there. Of course, she knew that there were more important things to focus on, but that didn't stop the occasional pang of homesickness from creeping up on her. In her more reflective moments, she would check in with her father and Marco, just to make sure everything was going well. Her communication with them wasn't frequent. She didn't want to bombard them, but she made an effort to reach out once a week. Sometimes it was a quick call with her father, and other times it was a text to Marco. The conversation was always brief. Her father would say, "Everything's fine. Maria, Marco is doing a good job looking after the house." It was the same message every time. Maria trusted him. Of course, he was her father. After all, but even so, something about the routine nature of his updates felt off. Still, she pushed the thought aside. Everything was fine. She kept telling herself the house was in good hands. Whenever she asked to speak to Marco, he was usually conveniently out or not available. At first, Maria didn't think much of it. She figured he was busy with his own things. He always had some new project or idea that he was working on. But as time went on, she started to notice a pattern. Marco's replies were always short and non-committal. "Good. Fine. All good," were the typical responses when she'd ask how things were going at the house. He didn't offer much in the way of detail, and it was starting to irritate Maria. Was he really that busy, or was something else going on? There were no pictures from the house on his social media, nothing to give her any sense of what was happening on the home front. Isabella, Marco's girlfriend, would occasionally post pictures, but they were always out at restaurants or at clubs, not inside the house. At first, Maria assumed it was out of respect for her privacy, but as the weeks stretched on, she started to wonder if there was something more going on. Why wasn't anyone posting pictures from inside her home? Why was Marco always too busy to talk, even though she'd made a point to check in with him? The thought gnawed at her. Maria didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the more she thought about it, the more she realized that something wasn't adding up. She had trusted Marco and Isabella to take care of her house, but the lack of communication, the absence of updates, it felt like they were hiding something. Maria's mind began to race, running through all the possibilities. She hadn't thought to check the security footage yet. She had been too busy with work to even consider it. But now, the thought crossed her mind, what if Marco wasn't taking care of the place the way he promised? What if they weren't following the rules they had agreed on? But even then, Maria couldn't fully shake the feeling that she was overreacting. She trusted her family, and she believed that her father wouldn't let anything go wrong. The house was supposed to be her sanctuary, her safe space, and she didn't want to entertain the idea that her family would betray that trust. It seemed impossible. Her father had always been the one to say, "Family helps family." It was his mantra, something he'd instilled in her from a young age. And so, Maria trusted that Marco, despite his flaws, would do the right thing. She didn't want to assume the worst, not after everything she had been through to get to this point. But here was the thing: Maria had already made her second mistake. She had trusted too much. She had trusted that her father would have her back, that Marco would follow the rules they had set, that everything would be fine. She had let her guard down, and that was the turning point. Trusting her family, as much as she wanted to, had been her downfall. The growing sense of unease, the small inconsistencies in the updates, the lack of transparency, it was all there, quietly simmering under the surface. And as much as Maria tried to ignore it, the feeling wouldn't go away. Looking back, Maria realized that she had overlooked the warning signs. She had been so caught up in the excitement of her own success, so immersed in the validation of her promotion and the thrill of her work, that she failed to question what was happening at home. She had been so focused on her own world in London that she hadn't paid close enough attention to the changes in Marco's behavior. And by the time she returned home, it would be too late to undo the damage. Her second mistake was trusting too easily, relying on the belief that family would always do right by her. In the end, it wasn't just about the house, it was about what she had learned about herself and her family. The signs had been there, but she had been too willing to ignore them. And in doing so, she had set herself up for a betrayal that would shake her to her core. Maria had always imagined that her return from London would be a joyful occasion. She had worked hard, led a successful project, and had just been promoted to a director position. She couldn't wait to come home, reconnect with her family, and share the good news. So, when she booked her flight home a day earlier than planned, she did so with the excitement of a surprise homecoming. The last thing she expected was the flood of dread that would hit her the moment the cab turned onto her street. Something wasn't right. The feeling settled in her stomach like a stone, heavy and unshakable. There were more cars parked along the curb than usual. As the cab pulled up to the driveway, Maria's heart sank. It was blocked by a flashy, bright blue sports car. Marco's car, the one she knew he couldn't afford. She sat there for a moment, staring at it, trying to make sense of the scene before her. Her eyes moved to the garden that she had worked so hard to keep immaculate, the garden she was proud of, and her stomach churned. Weeds had overtaken the flower beds. Her porch, once tidy and neat, was now littered with empty bottles, trash, and even a discarded pizza box. It looked nothing like the sanctuary she had left behind. The feeling in her gut grew darker as she paid the driver and stepped out of the cab. She dragged her suitcase behind her, trying to shake the sense of foreboding creeping over her. The closer she got to the door, the stronger the feeling of something being wrong became. The music hit her first. It was loud, thumping from the backyard, and the sound of laughter echoed around the yard. A party. It was no longer a house she recognized. Maria's pulse quickened as she reached for her keys, but when she tried to unlock the door, the key wouldn't turn. She tried again, more forcefully this time, but it was jammed. Her hand froze, confusion swirling in her mind. Why would the lock be jammed? Why wasn't she able to get in? And then it hit her. Panic set in, because she knew they had changed the locks. Her legs felt weak as she stood there on the porch, her suitcase now feeling like a heavy weight she couldn't carry. She couldn't understand it. She had trusted Marco and Isabella to take care of her house. But this was a violation. They hadn't just broken the rules, they had taken something that belonged to her. Her mind raced. She couldn't wrap her head around it. This wasn't just a mistake. This wasn't just a minor misunderstanding. They had taken control of her home while she was away, and it wasn't out of respect for her, it was something else entirely. With her heart pounding in her chest, Maria walked around the side of the house, Her suitcase bumped along the flagstones, a constant reminder that this wasn't a dream. This was her reality. When she reached the gate, she pushed it open, and what she saw made her blood run cold. The backyard was packed with at least 40 people, all strangers, laughing, drinking, and dancing. It was complete chaos. A makeshift bar had been set up on her outdoor dining table, and someone had hooked up speakers that were blasting music, drowning out everything else. The beautiful rose bushes she had worked so hard to cultivate were trampled, the vibrant colors now muddled and wilted. There were cigarette butts floating in her bird bath, something that had once been a small sanctuary for birds and, for Maria, a symbol of peace and beauty. And there, right in the middle of the madness, was Marco, holding a beer in one hand, telling some loud, obnoxious story to a group of strangers. Isabella was beside him, laughing, playing the part of the perfect hostess. The sight of them, so carefree, so comfortable in her home, made Maria's blood boil. She stood there for a moment, her hand gripping her suitcase as she took in the scene. It felt surreal. This couldn't be happening. Her eyes scanned the crowd, and for a split second, everything blurred together until she spotted her father, Antonio. He was manning the grill, flipping burgers as if nothing was wrong, as if this was perfectly normal. He caught sight of Maria first, his eyes widening in shock, the spatula he had been holding clattering to the patio stones. The people around him fell silent, and in that moment, the noise from the party seemed to fade away. It was as though the world had stopped turning, slowly, like a wave. The silence spread across the yard, until every single person was looking at her. The stranger with the suitcase? Marco's smile froze on his face when he saw her. His posture shifted, and he quickly plastered a grin on his face, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Maria, you're back early," he said, his voice dripping with false cheer. "We were just throwing you a surprise welcome home party." Maria's hands trembled as she gripped her suitcase, her heart pounding. She couldn't believe it. A welcome home party where no one, not even she, knew she was coming home. "A party," Maria said, her voice dangerously quiet. "Marco, we had an agreement." At that, her father stepped forward, wiping his hands on the apron that, ironically, had her initials embroidered on it. "Now, Maria, don't make a scene," he said, his voice calm, but laced with an undertone of authority that sent a chill down Maria's spine. "It's just a little get-together. The boy is celebrating." "Celebrating what?" Maria's voice grew sharper, the words forced out through clenched teeth. Her eyes locked onto Marco's. "Celebrating the fact that you changed the locks on my house." Marco took a step toward her, his bravado suddenly kicking in. He puffed out his chest, as though trying to regain control of the situation. "Look, we needed to talk to you about that. Things have changed while you've been away." He gestured expansively at the house, at the people in the yard. "This place is too big for you. Isabella and I are building a life here. We've settled in. It's ours now." Maria could hardly breathe. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. She repeated them in disbelief. "It's yours." The voice was barely a whisper. "This is my house. Marco, I bought it. I pay for it." Marco smirked at her, that same arrogance flashing in his eyes. "Yeah, about that," he said, his tone condescending. "Look, you'll thank me later. You're always working. You're never here. We're putting it to good use, making it a family home." Maria's chest tightened, her heart racing. But before she could respond, her father, standing proudly next to Marco, placed a hand on his shoulder, a look of immense pride on his face. Maria felt the last shred of hope she had for her father slip away in that instant. Antonio turned to her, his expression hard, cold even. devoid of the fatherly warmth that Maria had always longed for. "He deserves it more than you, Maria," her father said, his voice firm and with finality. "He's a man starting a family. You have your career. It's only fair that he gets a head start. We all agreed this is for the best." Maria's world tilted. She couldn't hear anything, everything, all the words, the noise from the party, the images of Marco and Isabella, the sound of her father's voice, it all blurred together, fading into the background. Her stomach twisted with disbelief. Her father, the man who had always told her family helps family, the man who had, in her mind, always supported her despite his flaws, had just told her that her brother, the one who had done nothing to earn it, deserved her home more than she did. And in that moment, Maria realized something it wasn't just the house, it wasn't just the betrayal of Marco and Isabella, it was the way her father had been complicit in it all, like the way he had stood there with pride as her entire world was being taken from her. The silence that followed felt suffocating. Maria's mind raced, but her body remained still, frozen in place. The anger that had been bubbling beneath the surface for so long finally exploded in her chest. But she didn't scream. She didn't cry. Instead, she looked at the three of them, her brother, his girlfriend, and her father, who stood united against her. A cold, calculating calm washed over her. "I see," Maria said, her voice quiet but sharp. "Interesting." The word was so unexpected, so devoid of the hysterical reaction they had clearly been anticipating, that it threw them off balance. Marco's smirk faltered, her father's brow furrowed in confusion, but Maria didn't wait for them to recover. Without another word, she turned on her heel, grabbed her suitcase, and walked out of the gate, away from the chaos, away from the people who had betrayed her. She didn't look back. As she walked down the street, the shock of what had just happened began to settle into a chilling, methodical fury. They hadn't just crossed a line, they had shattered it. And Maria knew one thing: this wasn't over. Maria's world had just been shattered, and as she walked away from the house, away from the scene of betrayal, a cold anger began to take root. She had trusted her family, believed in the values they had instilled in her. She had always thought that no matter what, family would have her back. But in that moment, Maria realized that those values had never truly existed. Not in the way she had believed. Her father, the man she had spent her entire life trying to please, had turned his back on her, just like Marco had. Her house, her sanctuary, had been taken from her, not just by Marco and Isabella, but by her father's tacit approval. The rage that had been simmering for months now boiled over, and Maria knew she couldn't let this slide. This was no longer about hurt feelings or a broken family. It was about reclaiming her life. She wasn't going to let them get away with this. No one was going to take what was hers and walk away unscathed. The first step was to clear her head. She couldn't make any decisions. Not yet. Not while she was still in shock. So, she walked, her mind racing, trying to process what had just happened. She walked for hours, not knowing where she was going, just needing to get away from the house, away from her family, from the mess that had become her life. The sun was setting when she finally pulled out her phone and called her cousin Sophia. Sophia was the one person in the family who had always seen through the facade, who understood Maria's struggles and her drive. She had always been the voice of reason, the one who knew exactly what was going on when Maria was too blinded by love or loyalty to see it. Sophia answered on the second ring, and Maria didn't waste any time. "Soph, I need your help," she said, her voice tight, barely able to hold it together. "They've taken everything from me. I need to do something about it." Sophia's voice was calm, but Maria could hear the concern in it. "What happened? Tell me everything. And so Maria did. She told her everything about the house, about the party, about the locks being changed, about the way her father had sided with Marco and Isabella. She told Sophia about the emotional betrayal, about the way her father had looked at her with indifference, and about how Marco and Isabella had taken control of her life. As Maria spoke, a sense of clarity began to form in her mind. This wasn't just about a house. This was about betrayal, manipulation, and the violation of trust. This was about standing up for herself, and she wasn't going to let them get away with it. Sophia listened patiently, and when Maria finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Then, Sophia spoke, her voice calm but firm. Maria, I'm so sorry this is happening to you, but you need to take legal action. This isn't just a family dispute anymore. What they've done is theft, and you have every right to protect what's yours. You need a lawyer, a real estate lawyer, someone who knows how to handle situations like this. Maria felt a sense of relief wash over her as she heard those words. A lawyer? She hadn't even thought about that. But it made sense. This wasn't just about hurt feelings, it was about facts, ownership, and the law. I'll do whatever it takes, Maria said, her voice steady. But I need help. I can't do this alone. Sophia was quick to act. I have a contact, she said. Her name is Miss Albright. She's one of the best real estate litigation specialists in the area. I'll set up a meeting for you. The next morning, Maria woke with a renewed sense of purpose. The grief over the betrayal was still there, still a dull ache in her chest, but it was now overshadowed by a clear determination. She wasn't going to let them win. They had underestimated her, thought she would roll over. But they had made a fatal mistake. Maria wasn't the helpless victim anymore. She was taking control of the situation. She was going to fight back. The first thing she did was gather evidence. She knew that if she wanted to stand a chance in court, she had to be organized. She had to be thorough. The digital paper trail they had left behind was undeniable. The security cameras installed at her house before she left for London had captured everything. The footage of Marco and Isabella moving their furniture in, the way they had sold her belongings online, and the footage of the wild parties, they were all there, clear as day. Maria spent the entire morning going through the footage, documenting every single red flag. She downloaded the files to her laptop, making sure she had a backup of everything. She checked her utility bills, finding the overdue payments that Marco and Isabella had ignored, all while living for free in her house. And then there was the email, the one confirming the nursery furniture delivery, scheduled to arrive at her house under Isabella's name. It was all there. A stack of evidence that would prove that Marco and Isabella had no intention of honoring the agreement they had made with her. Maria didn't stop there. She also found the informal house-sitting agreement she had typed up and had Marco sign before leaving for London. It was simple but clear. Marco and Isabella were guests. They were responsible for utilities, and they were not to make any alterations to the house. Changing the locks, she knew, was a violation of the terms of that agreement. All of it was building into a case that would give her the power to reclaim her home and hold them accountable for their actions. With the evidence in hand, Maria met with Miss Albright later that afternoon. The lawyer was everything Maria hoped for: sharp, focused, and no nonsense. When Maria laid out the evidence, Miss Albright's eyes widened with disbelief. This is one of the most brazen cases of unlawful detainer I've ever seen, she said, shaking her head. Your brother and his girlfriend aren't just tenants at will. They're trespassers. You have a solid case here. Maria felt a surge of relief as she heard those words. She wasn't crazy. They had broken the law. It wasn't just about family anymore. It was about taking back what was hers. What do I do next? Maria asked, her voice firm now. Miss Albright wasted no time. Step 1, we file an eviction notice. We serve them with a legal document that gives them 3 days to vacate the property. Step 2, we secure your property. Once they're served, we can arrange for a locksmith to change the locks and regain control. Step 3, we deal with the utility companies. They've been living there without your permission, racking up bills in your name. We'll notify the companies and suspend services. Maria nodded, her resolve growing stronger with each word. She wasn't going to let them get away with it. She was going to take back her life, and she was going to do it with precision and strategy. She wasn't just reacting to the betrayal anymore, she was in control. As the meeting ended and Maria left the lawyer's office, she felt a shift inside her. She wasn't the helpless victim anymore. She had a plan. She had the law on her side. And with Sophia's help, she was going to make sure Marco and Isabella paid for what they had done. She wasn't going to let them take anything else from her. Maria's next steps were calculated, deliberate. She would make sure everything was in place before taking action. She would not let her family or anyone underestimate her again. The fight had just begun. Maria's resolve grew stronger with every passing hour, her focus now entirely fixed on reclaiming her home. She was no longer the helpless victim caught in the web of betrayal. She was a woman taking control, using every tool at her disposal to right the wrongs done to her. The first thing she did was take a deep breath and settle in front of her laptop. It was time to put her tech skills to use. As a senior UX designer, Maria had always prided herself on her ability to solve problems with precision. This was no different. The first thing she did was change the Wi-Fi password. It might seem small, but Maria knew the impact it would have. Marco and Isabella, relying on her internet for everything from their social media presence to their own work, would now be cut off. Their online world, which was built on the illusion of success and luxury, was about to come crashing down. Maria carefully logged into the router's settings, changed the password, and watched the devices connected to her network disappear one by one. It was a small, petty act, but it felt satisfying. She knew they would panic when they realized they were cut off from everything they had built on the back of her generosity. Marco, especially, was someone who depended on the appearance of wealth and success. His social media profile was his currency. Taking that away was her first strike in a battle she was now fully committed to winning. But that wasn't enough. Maria knew that the digital paper trail she had been gathering wasn't just about exposing their theft. It was about ensuring that she had the upper hand in every way. She contacted her homeowners association, HOA, knowing that this was the key to putting pressure on Marco and Isabella. Her neighborhood's HOA was notoriously strict, with a very active online forum where residents regularly posted complaints. Maria logged into the forum and saw a few new threads that had caught her attention. There was one about an unfamiliar blue sports car parked in the fire lane. Another one complained about loud music late at night, and a third about an unkempt lawn, her lawn. Each one pointed directly to her address. It was the perfect opportunity. Maria drafted a polite but firm email to the HOA management company. She introduced herself as the legal owner of the property, explained that she had been away for work, and that Marco and Isabella had been living in her house without her permission. She mentioned that she was taking legal steps to have them removed and apologized for the disturbances they had caused to the neighborhood. The email served two purposes. First, it positioned Maria as a responsible homeowner who was rectifying the situation. Second, it officially put the HOA on notice. Maria knew that once the HOA became involved, they would apply pressure on Marco and Isabella in ways she could not. The HOA would start issuing fines, holding Marco and Isabella accountable for the violations. And with the HOA watching, the illusion of their perfect life would start to unravel. Maria's next move was to get the legal eviction process underway. She had already met with Miss Albright, and now it was time to put the plan into action. She made sure everything was in place. She had the eviction notice drafted, and it was just a matter of serving it. She was calm, methodical, each step taken with precision. There was no room for hesitation. She had to move fast, but she couldn't afford to rush. Every action needed to be deliberate, calculated. So Marco and Isabella couldn't claim that they were victims of some misunderstanding. The eviction notice would give them 3 days to vacate the property, but Maria knew they would probably ignore it. That was fine. She had prepared for that, too. Maria knew that the key to winning this battle wasn't just about the physical eviction, it was about the digital evidence she had been compiling. She knew Marco and Isabella had been using her Wi-Fi to run their lives, to build their brand, and to live their lies. They had no idea what was coming next. After changing the Wi-Fi password, Maria spent the evening combing through Isabella's social media accounts. Isabella, always so careful to maintain an image of wealth and success, had posted numerous pictures of herself in fancy restaurants, on weekend trips, and out shopping. She curated every detail of her life to make it look like she and Marco were living the dream. But what Isabella didn't know was that Maria had screenshots of everything: the expensive dinners, the new clothes, the captions bragging about their lifestyle. It wasn't just the image of wealth that Maria was after. It was the realization that their entire online persona was built on Maria's kindness. The illusion was fragile, and now Maria was poised to expose it. She took note of every post, every story, every picture. She saved everything to her laptop, knowing that these were the cracks in the facade that would bring it all tumbling down. By the time Maria finished going through their social media, the sense of control she had felt earlier was now palpable. She wasn't just reclaiming her house, she was dismantling everything they had built. Marco and Isabella had thought they could take what was hers and walk away, but Maria was showing them, step by step, that they had underestimated her. The law was on her side, and she wasn't afraid to use it. They had violated her trust, and now she was taking back not just her house, but her dignity. The next morning, Maria walked into the lawyer's office to finalize the legal proceedings. Miss Albright was waiting for her, a stack of papers on the desk. "We're ready," the lawyer said, her voice calm, assured. "We'll get the notice served today, and then we'll start the process of securing your property." Maria nodded, her mind already moving ahead. She had no doubt that Marco and Isabella would try to resist, try to fight back, but she was ready for that. She had planned every step, thought of every possible scenario, and she wasn't going to let them get away with what they had done. As she left the office, Maria took a moment to stand outside, looking up at the sky. The anger that had once consumed her was now replaced by something else, a quiet confidence. She had the power to take back what was hers. She wasn't just a victim anymore. She was someone who had taken control of her life, her home, and her future. And when Marco and Isabella realized what was coming for them, Maria would be ready. The day of the eviction had arrived, and Maria could feel the tension in the air, thick and heavy. From the vantage point of her hotel room, she watched the events unfold on her laptop screen, each moment ticking by with the precision of a clock winding down to its inevitable conclusion. It was the final act in a drama she had spent weeks meticulously setting into motion. The process server had already delivered the eviction notice that morning, and the deadline was fast approaching. Marco and Isabella had 3 days to vacate, but Maria knew they would likely ignore it. They thought they could defy the law, that they could keep living in her house without facing any consequences. Maria was about to show them just how wrong they were. The first sign that their world was beginning to unravel came just after 5 o'clock p.m. Maria watched the backyard camera feed as the string lights they had set up on the patio flickered and then went dark. The house, once filled with music and laughter, was now plunged into darkness. Maria couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction wash over her. She had made sure the utilities would be cut off, and the moment the power went out, she knew it would hit Marco and Isabella hard. Their entire lifestyle had been built on convenience, on the appearance of wealth and success. And now that foundation was crumbling. The lights flickered again, and the house stood silent. Marco's bubble had burst. At 5:05 p.m., a municipal truck rolled up to the curb, and a worker climbed out to turn off the water. The rhythmic sound of the water being shut off echoed in Maria's ears as she watched the footage. The house, once a symbol of their carefree life, was now nothing more than an empty shell. There would be no more hot showers, no more cooking meals in her kitchen. They had overstayed their welcome, and now they would feel the consequences of their actions. By 5:30 p.m., the locksmith arrived, just as planned. Maria's heart beat faster in her chest as she saw the van pull into her driveway. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The locksmith, a professional with years of experience, had been briefed on the situation. He quickly set to work, drilling out the old lock Marco had installed and replacing it with a new, high-security one. Maria watched as the technician worked, his movements efficient and confident. The house was now hers again. As the old lock was removed and the new one was in place, Maria felt a wave of relief wash over her. She wasn't just reclaiming her property, she was reclaiming her dignity. She was taking back control of her life, piece by piece. And then, like clockwork, Marco and Isabella appeared on the scene. Maria had been waiting for this moment, knowing that Marco's arrogance would never let him accept defeat. He came swaggering down the street, his flashy blue sports car parked in front of the house. Isabella, ever the sidekick, was beside him, her face a mix of confusion and frustration. They approached the front door, their confidence quickly turning to disbelief when Marco reached for the handle and found that the key no longer fit. Maria watched, her breath steady, as Marco jiggled the lock, frustration creeping across his face. He had no idea what was coming next. In a fit of rage, Marco kicked the door, then threw the eviction notice onto the ground. Maria could feel the anger and humiliation radiating from him. He was trapped in his own web of lies, and now he had nowhere to go. Isabella's tears only seemed to add fuel to the fire. Maria's heart didn't soften, not this time. She had been the one who had been wronged, and watching Marco squirm was strangely satisfying. The show, it seemed, was just getting started. At that moment, Maria saw the flashing lights of an approaching vehicle. A white SUV with HOA security emblazoned on the side pulled up. Marco's eyes locked onto the security guard, and Maria could almost hear the frustration in his voice as he started yelling. The scene was chaotic now. Marco was screaming at the guard, pointing toward the house, while Isabella tried to pull him away. It was clear that Marco had thought this would blow over, that his family's influence could make the whole thing disappear. But the neighborhood was no longer on his side. The HOA security officer was likely informing him of the violation, of the loud party, of the parking issues. Marco's bravado was crumbling before his eyes. Maria's phone buzzed. It was the call she had been waiting for. She had placed a quiet 911 call just moments before, knowing that things were about to escalate. "Yes, I'd like to report a disturbance at my property," she said calmly, giving the address, and the current occupants are trespassing, and they're becoming aggressive with HOA security. Within minutes, 2 police cars arrived on the scene, sirens flashing, but silent. Maria watched, her heart racing, as the officers stepped out of their vehicles. Marco's face drained of color as the officers approached. He was no longer the smug, confident man who had invaded her home. He was a desperate, cornered animal, trying to figure out a way to escape the consequences of his actions. The officers spoke briefly with the HOA security guard, then turned to Marco and Isabella. Separating them, Maria watched as Marco's name was run through the system. She couldn't hear the conversation, but she knew it wasn't going well for him. The officers checked the eviction notice posted on the door, and Maria felt a flicker of satisfaction as she saw them nod in acknowledgement. This wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was a legal issue. Marco was now facing the consequences of his theft, his arrogance, and his refusal to respect the law. The final moment came when the officers escorted Marco and Isabella to their car. Their guests, the ones who had witnessed the spectacle, quickly began to disperse. Realizing that the perfect life Marco and Isabella had so carefully constructed was nothing more than a house of cards, the neighborhood, once in the dark about what had really been happening behind closed doors, now saw Marco for who he truly was, a man who had stolen from his own sister, who had taken advantage of her kindness and trust. The weight of the community's judgment was too much for Marco to bear. And as the police car drove away, Maria couldn't help but feel a rush of relief. The house, her house, was finally hers again. As the street returned to quiet, Maria stood there, watching the aftermath of the chaos. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. Her home was safe, and she had fought back. The betrayal she had experienced had transformed her into someone unrecognizable from the woman who had left for London months before. She wasn't the victim anymore. She was the victor. And as the last of the police cars disappeared down the street, Maria took a deep breath and smiled, knowing that she had taken back her life. As Maria stood in her quiet living room, the weight of the past few months began to sink in. She had fought for her home, for her independence, and for the sense of self that had always been overshadowed by the expectations of her family. She had faced betrayal from the people she had trusted most, but through it all, she had found a strength she never knew she had. Looking around at the space she had fought so hard to protect, Maria felt a deep sense of peace settle over her. It wasn't just about the house anymore, it was about reclaiming herself. She had learned that sometimes. Standing up for yourself means breaking free from the expectations that others place on you. It means realizing that your worth isn't determined by the people around you, but by the choices you make and the strength you find within yourself. The experience had changed her, transformed her in ways she hadn't imagined. She wasn't the quiet daughter trying to prove her value anymore. She was someone who had taken control of her life, someone who knew her worth and wasn't afraid to fight for it. Maria realized that she didn't need the approval of her father or her brother to feel successful. She had built her life on her own terms, and that was enough. As she walked through her home, now fully hers again, Maria couldn't help but smile. She had overcome what seemed like an insurmountable obstacle, and in doing so, she had found her true strength. She wasn't just a survivor, she was a warrior, and this victory was hers to keep. And as she reflected on her journey, Maria knew this wasn't just her story. It was the story of anyone who had ever had to fight for their place in the world, for their voice to be heard, for their boundaries to be respected. It was a reminder that no matter how hard life gets, you have the power to take back control, to stand up for what's yours, and to grow stronger in the process. If you found strength in Maria's story, or if you've ever faced your own battle for independence and respect, take a moment to reflect on your own journey. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to keep following these incredible journeys of empowerment and resilience. After all, we all have a little Maria inside us, ready to rise up, reclaim, and grow stronger every day.